Good morning, everyone. Oil and gas and natural gas have been a part of Canada's history, a part of our whole story. Since 1884, the Canadian Pacific Railway found natural gas and started using that to heat their buildings. And from that, a major Canadian oil and gas company was born. But I'll get to that. First, I want everybody to be on the same page and understand how much foreign oil Canada buys. So, CBC News is reporting in April of this year, 2019, Canada's oil imports from Saudi Arabia on the rise since 2014, trade figures show. Canada's oil imports from Saudi Arabia have been rising steadily for the past 5 years, according to Statistics Canada trade data reviewed by CBC News. And a festering diplomatic spat with the kingdom appears not to have had any significant impact on Canada's appetite for Raja crude. The total volume of Canada's imports from Saudi Arabia has increased by 66% since 2014, with imports rising every year during that period. Last year, Canadian companies spent $3.54 billion importing 6.4 million cubic meters of Saudi oil, up from 5.9 million cubic meters worth of $2.5 billion in 2017, before the dispute started in August of 2018. In January 2019, for example, oil imports from the kingdom were 606,000 cubic meters, up from 559,000 cubic meters a year earlier. And although monthly imports gyrate significantly, a normal trend in the oil business, according to analysts, the long-term trend is unmistakable. Over 5 years, imports from Saudi have increased, said David Hughes, a former research manager with the Geological Survey of Canada and president of Global Sustainability Research, a consultancy in Calgary. In January 2019, Saudi oil accounted for roughly 10% of Canadian consumption, up from about 8% in 2017, he said. Saudi Arabia is the second largest source of foreign oil for Canada after the United States. Okay. And, well, here's the story of what's happening to Canadian oil companies. So we're spending a lot of money, billions of dollars a year, to purchase foreign oil, while simultaneously shutting down our own local oil production. It doesn't seem sane. It seems very silly. Okay. Partially because in Canada we have controls of the environmental standards that can be put on the oil production, right? Like, the oil is getting used. There's no doubt about that. We're buying more and more of it. So this way we're just buying it from a place that's completely unregulated. Does it make any kind of sense? No? Yeah, well, welcome to Canada, everyone. Hashtag it's 2019. Okay, Pat Kelly is reporting, quote, catastrophic, unsurprising, and 100% on Trudeau. The election was only 10 days ago, and since then, CItadel moved all their rigs out of Canada. Husky cut more jobs, and Encana is leaving Canada and changing their name, on top of $100 billion that has left Alberta since 2015. Yeah, so first, Husky, and I want to look at Husky, but I want to let you know what does Husky look like? Is Husky an American company or is it a Canadian company? Because I didn't know. And it was an American company started in 1938, but came to Canada in 1946. In 1946, the company relocated to Canada, with the Riverton refinery moved to Lloydminster, Alberta, to take advantage of the expanding asphalt and heavy oil opportunities in the area. A wholly owned subsidiary, Husky Oil and Refining Limited, was created and headquartered in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. In 1991, Lee Ka Sing, Hogshead Sprouter, and Hutchison Wampa acquired controlling ownership of Husky. Sorry, I didn't read all of that. So these are partners in Hong Kong who are joining Lee Ka Sing to own Husky. So a Canadian company purchased by a Hong Kong billionaire. And, well, anybody read Project Sidewinder? No? Yeah? Okay. CBC News is reporting Husky Energy announces layoffs. This is the day after the election, October 22nd, 2019. Months after revealing plans to cut its capital spending, Husky Energy Incorporated announced Tuesday it's also reducing its workforce, but did not say by how much. Husky has been taking steps to better align the organization and workforce with our capital plan and strategy, Kim Guttermson, a spokesperson for the Calgary-based company, said in a statement. These changes put Husky in the best position to achieve its goals. The company said it would not be sharing the number of jobs affected. Outside the Calgary headquarters, cabs were lined up to take people home as they filed out with their belongings. This was about changing the way we approach our business, the way we make decisions, and the way we work together to meet our goals, Guttermson said. So, interesting. Husky is cutting jobs. Here is CItadel. I believe it's CItadel. Yep, CItadel. So this is October 30th, 8 days after the election, and this is CBC Business reporting. It's the smart thing to do. Canadian oil driller moves all of its rights to the U.S. Before oil prices crashed in 2014, there were about 900 drilling rigs in Western Canada. Now there are 550. It wasn't an easy decision for the management team at CItadel Drilling. They were a Canadian company with Canadian workers, and they knew the Canadian oil patch well. It wasn't a cheap decision to make either. Picking up a drilling rig and moving it south of the border would cost about $1 million. Moving just one rig amounts to 57 semi-trailer loads of equipment. 2 years ago, CItadel Drilling began moving its rigs to the U.S. The firm now has all 6 of its rigs operating in the Permian Basin, which covers part of western Texas and southeastern New Mexico, and more than 100 Canadian workers rotating in and out. The decision was difficult for the company's executives, although in hindsight it was a no-brainer. CEO Dan Hoffarth says if CItadel Drilling had stayed in Canada, it wouldn't have survived. The company wouldn't exist. There's just not enough activity here to support our operations, Hoffarth said in an interview. CItadel's story isn't uncommon these days. A significant exodus of crews and equipment to the U.S., including hundreds of drilling rigs over the past 5 years, reflects the depressed state of the industry in Western Canada. It also suggests any return to fortune for the sector is viewed as still years away. The collapse in oil prices began 5 years ago, and the oil patch has struggled ever since. Even when prices have shown signs of rebounding, the sector hasn't been able to capitalize because of lack of pipeline capacity to export the crude. The Alberta government chose to limit oil production to boost prices and reduce storage levels in the province. The move largely achieved those goals, but there have been consequences, including a reduction in drilling activity. In general, those in the industry say investors would much rather place their money in the U.S., where there is a greater pipeline capacity and easier access to permits and licenses. Right, so currently we can't get our oil to market, and the market we can get our oil to, we have to sell at a discount because, well, we're only selling it into the United States and they have to refine it, right? And even if we get it to Tidewater, if there's no market to take it, if China says, yeah, well, we don't want your oil, because currently China doesn't want our pork or our soy or pretty much anything to do with us, right? So what happens then? What happens then is we have to deliver our oil to the United States at a discount. Right. So why not send it east? Well, SNC-Lavalin and Saudi Arabia have something to say about that. But isn't it interesting how nobody seems to care that we're sending all of our trained workers, all of our businesses, all of our and having a business running is something that's important because they've got the relationships ready, right? Like they can make a call and have crews ready to go. They can be like, listen, I've got this opportunity here. Do you have 10 guys that I can get out there and start this thing going? They've got that capacity and they've got the rigs and stuff. Now the rigs are moved, right? The rigs have moved because the opportunities are gone and we don't have the opportunity to turn that back on quickly. It will take years. Our industry is destroyed, right? Here's the Canadian company I was alluding to earlier, Encana. And Encana, well, here it is, foundation of a North American resource play leader. Encana is one of North America's oldest oil and natural gas producers. Our roots go back to the late 1800s when workers for the Canadian Pacific Railway, CPR, drilling a water well, discovered natural gas. We opted to make use of this newly discovered resource. In 1884, CPR drilled the first producing gas well in Alberta, Canada, to supply railway buildings with natural gas. That well was in use for about 50 years. 50 years. And now, this is reported October 31st, Encana moving to the U.S., changing its name as Canada becomes a dirty word in the oil patch. Canada's beleaguered energy sector suffered another morale blow as Encana Corp, one of its marquee companies that was born out of the 19th century railway boom, announced plans to move its headquarters to the U.S. and drop the link to Canada from its name. The Calgary-based company said Thursday that it will establish a corporate domicile in the U.S. early next year, pending various approvals, and rebrand under the name Ovintiv Inc. The shares fell as much as 9.3%. In Toronto, the biggest drop in a year. The move is likely to intensify the gloom already hanging over the Canadian energy industry, which has suffered from a lack of pipeline space that has choked off the prospects for growth, prompting foreign companies to ditch more than $30 billion US of assets in the past 3 years. Encana joins pipeline owners TransCanada Corp, which changed its name to TC Energy Corp earlier this year. I didn't even talk about this one, but this is a recent blow as well. I mean, they're removing Canada from the name. And I mean, it's not like taxpayer dollars didn't go into this, right? Back to the article. Quote, Canada is no longer viewed as a world-class destination for capital, both generally and specifically for oil and gas. Mac Van Weilingen, founder and partner of ARC Financial Corp, a Calgary-based private equity firm focused on Canadian energy industry, said in an interview, there's a whole combination of factors at work that are really working against Canada. Yeah, and I mean, I think that kind of gives a good overview. This is a more flowery article. There's a lot more story in this article if you're interested in the history of Encana and the how they got to where they are now. I thought that was interesting. And I would be remiss in talking about oil and gas and not mentioning Vivian Cruz and her documentary Over a Barrel. Currently, it was free. Currently, they're trying to get it back to being free. The link is in the description, overabarreldoc.com. But I think it's worth mentioning, there are coordinated people putting money into landlocking our oil. This isn't just government ineptitude. This isn't just Justin Trudeau, although his policies play into it quite a lot. His inaction, he hasn't built any pipelines in 4 years. We had 3 ready to go, including Energy East, right? Energy East is dead. And Trans Mountain was purchased and continually it's a money pit. Like it's like, oh yeah, well you have to pay this to maintain this thing, and just around the corner it'll be fixed and ready to go. It's not, and it's getting worse. And there are reasons for this, identifiable reasons. Follow the money, as lots of people say. So I find all this really interesting. I find Canadians' lack of caring about how much money we spend on foreign oil, Saudi oil, and the passion with which they will argue with you about pipelines, despite the fact that we still use the oil. We still use it, right? It's not like Canadians are not using the oil. It's not sitting there rotting, right? It's not sitting in a farm field somewhere just, oh, look at the oil fields nobody's using. No, we use the oil. Why not use Canadian oil? Can somebody argue against that? Oh, well, the arguments I've heard are just ridiculous, so I'm not going to rehash them here, but it is maddening on so many levels, because you can't even begin to have a conversation with somebody because they just start parroting media talking points. So it's not even worth starting. And maybe that's the point. Maybe it's the point. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. I'm there chatting with everyone about all of this stuff, all of this maddening stuff. Come and join us. We'd love to have you. And, well, it's the weekend, so have a wonderful weekend, everyone.